you hear all the time, I wish my dad would work less so he could be with me more. And
Yeah.
that's where that comes from, because ultimately when it's all said and done, our spouse, especially a non-entrepreneur spouse, and our children, they want our time. They want our presence. They don't want us to be perfect.
Well, welcome to the True Man Podcast. You know, being a dad is riddled with challenges. You know that, right? Now, on the best days, we run ourselves silly. Just trying to keep up with everything going on. Now, if you're a dad entrepreneur like I am, that can be even more challenging because your kids want everything money buys, but what they really want is more of your presence and attention. So, how do we stay present and engaged and still build a business that can impact the world? Well, let's find out. Welcome guest Cory Rankin to the podcast. Now, Cory helps entrepreneurs increase business profits by strengthening their marriages and other relationships at home. Cory is also starting the Dad Ascenders podcast to help men become more intentional fathers. Cory, welcome to the True Man Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So, tell us about being a dad and being an entrepreneur. Give us a little background story about how you keep it all together and how you became an entrepreneur.
Yes, just that statement alone, I could talk for 2 hours on that alone. It's been quite a wild journey. I'll kind of give a mixture of both. And so I have a doctorate degree in physical therapy. So I was in grad school in preparation to become a physical therapist and own my own clinic. I didn't even really know the word entrepreneur. I just kind of figured that eventually I would have my own clinic, but God had different plans for me. Before I passed my licensure exam, I became an entrepreneur, and God may help me make a pivot from physical therapy to relationship coaching as an entrepreneur. So I help entrepreneur men become more intentional present fathers. And this came about almost forced, because when I was in physical therapy school, I was a foster parent. I had young kids. My wife was a nurse and she was working to put me through school. I was so focused on grad school that I was not showing up the way that I needed to for my family. And so the way I serve now and my entrepreneur journey kind of came as a necessity, because I pride myself in the relationships and really being present. And I was forced to study in such a capacity that I was at the library before school in the evening. I went to a private Jewish school, and my school was open from 2 a.m. from 6 a.m. till 2 a.m. So it was closed for just a short 4 hours so the janitors can clean and stuff like that. And many nights I was being kicked out because the campus was closing for that. Or when I would get home, my wife would be asleep on the couch just waiting for me. The kids would be in bed. And a lot of times my only interaction with my kids was in the parking lot when my wife had brought a Tupperware dinner and we would eat leftovers real fast. And then I'd rush back to get to study, because I had severe sleep apnea and I didn't know it for the first semester and a half of grad school. And so I really was struggling to retain the information, and I had to study longer, and it was really challenging. And so just a collection of that, I just wasn't who I needed to be as a husband, as a father, as a disciple of Christ. I was not showing up the way I needed to, and my family was really being impacted. And so through some great mentorship, through some guidance of the Lord, I now have a system to be present. I have been a foster parent for 10 years and have adopted 5 kids. So my kids are now 5, 6, 6, 7, and 10. And I have a system that I help other entrepreneur men be present and really show up for their kids, because I was absent for so long and it was such a painful thing. And that's not my character. That wasn't something that I it was just the way things happened.
Now, Cory, talk about this a little bit. I think adoption is a very special thing, incredibly unselfish, right? I mean, as you could go through, you could go through life just doing your own thing, but instead, you and your wife decided to go through the adoption process, and so talk about that because my understanding in talking with a lot of parents that have adopted is in most, if not all cases, these adoptive kids, they come right with some baggage and a little extra special care and time. So, talk about that a little bit and just how that process has helped you become the father that you are today.
Yeah, so a lot of times people will give me credit. Oh, you're so wonderful. You got such a big heart. You're doing such a favor for those kids. But really, I was the one that was winning because I,
Right.
of the 10 years of foster care, we had cared for 30 children and have adopted 5 of those. I've learned to love at a level deeper than most. Each of these children that came in my home had different concerns, different needs, different struggles, different traumas that they experienced, and so they had different levels of need for me. For instance, my 6-year-old son, or he's 7, he's 6. I got
It's
a
hard to
6.
keep track of them all.
Well, yeah, because my youngest just turned 5, and then I have a 6-year-old, another 6-year-old, a
Wow.
7-year-old that will be 8 in May, and a 10-year-old, and so they're back to back. But my 6-year-old son, when he came to us, his mom was a heavy drug user. He was in and off the street. He spent some time on the streets. His mom was homeless. So when he came to us, he was with a family friend, and then she was older and wasn't able to care for him. His mother overdosed on Mother's Day,
Oh my
and
gosh.
and and so he came into care, but he came after being with a family friend. Like his grandmother is her friend was watching him, and then she was older and couldn't care for him, and so that's when he came into the foster care system. But for the first 3 weeks, it was really, really challenging. He was 16 months old when he came into our home, and he cried nonstop for 3 weeks straight. And when I say nonstop, it's not an exaggeration. Like oftentimes that is an exaggeration. My kid cries nonstop, and
Yeah, right,
like,
right.
but in this scenario, if he was not eating or sleeping, he was either isolating himself with the car or crying. It was really, really challenging. And he was 16 months old when he came into our home, and he was depressed. He did not know how to receive love, and it was very challenging because he didn't want my attention. So he's afraid in a new environment. He's just left a environment where he was familiar with because the friend, the person caring for him was friends with his grandma, so he knew her and was familiarity. And then now he's in a strange home, doesn't know anyone, doesn't in that scenario, the easiest thing to do is just swoop him up and love him and hug the kid. But he didn't like hugs. He didn't want that affection, and he wanted to be isolated. So
Right.
he very much would take a car. Thank goodness we had lots of toys and cars that he grabbed some cars, because if he didn't initially gravitate towards the cars, we would have really struggled to know how to help him. But he found comfort in cars, so he got our toy bin and would grab a car and go lay in the hallway, isolated by himself, and just drive the car, make sounds and on the floor. But I didn't know, this is my first encounter of a 16-month-old kid who was
Yeah.
depressed. And so for him, it was really, really challenging. He would cry nonstop because he was afraid. He needed additional love, but he didn't know how to receive it. And it was even more challenging because he was fully capable. He would talk, but he wouldn't. He just was so
Yeah.
in the state of shock and trauma that when we would try to talk to him, he wouldn't. And thank goodness he was a good eater. He had comfort in food, as otherwise we really would have been in trouble. But he his body was just in so much shock. He
Yeah.
wouldn't receive love. And the biggest problem is we didn't know what he was capable of. He was very capable of a lot of things, but the home he came from, the lady did everything for him. She carried him up the stairs so he could walk, but he couldn't navigate the stairs. And it was rough.
Cory, what did you learn about yourself or being a good father by going through that?
Just that the best I can do is be a space of safety in. Even though it wasn't something that was received very well, it was something that was open. A lot of times that kind of love and affection would have been shut off because it would have been rejected. But I just kept loving every chance I get. I tried to give him a hug. I tried to have conversations. And one thing I learned is that there's never too much love with children, whether they know how to receive it or not. And that was the one thing for us as caring for over 30 children as foster parents. We once had a child in our home for 18 hours. We had another sibling set in our home for a week and a half. And so in a calendar period of 3 weeks, we had 7 children in our home in 3-week period of time. Just one was in our home for 18 hours. The mom was the one that lost care, and then they located the dad that didn't know the child was born, and he went home. And so that was a good situation, but by the time the background checks cleared and stuff, it was just 18 hours. And so we had the approach that however long the child is in our home, at least we will give them love, because with the circumstances around foster care, there's a lot of neglect, a lot of abuse, a lot of different trauma that is just not. There's different levels, but a lot of it is just neglect, like just young teen parents or poor parents didn't have the resources to care for their kids. And so it wasn't that the parenting themselves were making, it was just the circumstances they had, the knowledge, they had, just education and the resources weren't so well. And so the one thing I learned the most is that there's never too much love that for a child. There's no such thing as too many people to love a kid. And we took that approach for however long that a child was going to be in our home, because we had 18 hours was our shortest, and 1.5 years was the longest that didn't result in adoption. And so we had everything in between, a couple months to a few weeks. And so the thing that I learned the most through that is that my heart was open and capable of extending love, and these children needed love in such a capacity that they often haven't ever yet received. And so for however long these children were in my home, at least they were protected and they were loved for however long that was. That might have been the very first time that they have felt true love, depending on the circumstances and the things like that. And so the thing that I learned the most out of 10 years of foster care is just children will receive the love that is available for them. And they may not receive it the way that we think they will, but when it's available, they'll take it eventually.
That's deep stuff, Cory. That's really deep stuff. And I was sitting here thinking to myself, and I'd love you to talk about this a little bit, is that when you were saying that, I was thinking about the love God has for us. And if somebody didn't know better, they might be thinking that you were talking about God, right? Because that's the exact same kind of love that God has for us. So how have you guys? It almost seems like a silly question to ask now that I'm thinking about this. But how does your faith life play into that relationship with the children, and how do you show them? I mean, is it just through love, which is plenty for sure, but how do you show them that they're beloved children of a God that loves them? In some cases, maybe it's only a short period of time, but how do you show them that?
the biggest thing that I found success in showing that love is to give these kids or anybody, any relationship, this
Yeah.
applies to any relationship, but give the people that matter most the confidence that they truly matter.
Mm,
Especially with kids, they oftentimes there's something that there's a little bit challenging, whether it's opening a package of a snack or tying their shoes or whatever, some sort of task that's a little bit challenging that is uncomfortable, and they make one attempt and they do it poorly, or they're not able to do the thing that they're trying to do. And you hear all this, I can't do this. And I think that is one of the ways that we help them is just, I very quickly eliminate, I can't do this, because that associates with them that they're weak, that they're not good enough, that they're not capable. But I tell all my kids, my wife, my kids, my friends, everybody, that you can do hard things and that you
yeah.
matter and that you're enough. And that knowledge right there is often just what it takes, because when the child is saying I can't do this or I'm not good enough, that can spiral down to a true belief that they aren't good enough. And that's absolutely not true. Everyone's good enough. Everyone has value. Everyone is on this earth for a purpose, both a God-given purpose and an individual purpose, and everything. And so I think the way to help them feel that love is just be there to encourage them to know that just because you didn't do it the first time doesn't mean you're not capable of doing it.
Yeah.
It might need some more work and attention. And if you are not able to do, don't say I can't do it. Let's change the word to I can't do it yet, or I am working on it. Because how many times does a child say, I can't tie my shoe, and then they just leave it, and then you turn your back and they've tied their shoe? They just needed a little bit more practice and things. And so for me, that's my biggest thing, how I shared the love and feel the love and help the kids learn, is just help them understand that they're worth it, that they have
Yeah.
a very valuable purpose, and that they matter, and that my life is better when they're in it, and when our relationship is strong, and when children have that confidence that no, you can do it. It might be hard, but doing hard things is good. Like
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah,
want
and
everything to be handed to us.
that runs a little counterintuitive to some of the things going on in our culture this day. Right, our culture says if it's easy, they try to make it easy. But it's those hard things that we fight through, right? That we teach our kids to fight through. That's where they become real winners in life, I think.
Absolutely. And I think that is one of my greatest joys of foster care and of having the
Mm,
ability to parent 30 children, because many, many parents have two, three, four kids, maybe five or six, but for the most part, most people aren't having more than six kids, and two, three, four kids. That's a lot of different personalities and stuff. But I've had 30 times to fail and get it wrong. So I've learned a level deeper than most,
yeah.
different ways to handle different things and things like that. But with that, it really is exciting to see the belief change from I can't do this, I'm not good enough, this is too hard, to look at me, look what I just accomplished.
Yeah.
And people tell us all the time, like, I don't know, how can you foster? It's so hard. I couldn't open my heart to that. But and it was very hard. It's very hard when you love and you pour your heart into a child. And like the one that I was referring to that we had for 18 months that went home, we thought for sure that that was going to be lead to adoption from the beginning, because she was one of seven. The older six kids have all already been adopted. And then after a year and a half, the dad is the one that actually came out of nowhere and started working his plan. And this little girl went home to her dad, not even her mom. And so that was challenging. And people tell us all the time, well, how do you do that? How can you even open your heart to love? And I turn it over to the Lord. And
Yeah.
my approach, the way that I could manage it so it didn't hurt so much when the child did go home after that bond, is my first approach is however long they're in my home, at least they've been loved, at least they've been valued for that period of time, but also it, however long they were in my home, at least there's a period of life that they've had what every child deserves: love,
Mm,
connection. And yes, it hurts, but I know that the time that I had, they can at least reflect back on. So, regardless of how things happen in their life, whether things at home turn around or they continue to be child after child, at least they have a small period of time. Well, I can look back. I was loved, I was encouraged, I was valued, and I knew that I mattered. And whether that's something they carry on with them or not, that's outside of my control. But at least when they're in my home, they knew that they mattered. And that is the approach that I took to be able to be a foster parent. Because you're right, foster care is very challenging. Going to court, having to be aware of the stories of the trauma that kids have experienced and things like that. Most people would not make good foster parents just because they wouldn't know how to compartmentalize that. Just because it's not permanent, just because you're not biologically my children, doesn't mean you can't receive the same
right.
love that I have to offer and those kind of things. And so this is actually, I've done many podcasts about foster care and being a parent, but this is actually a unique one. I haven't broken down in a way that that much about how focusing on helping the kids know that they matter and finding their worth. And so I appreciate those questions you've asked so far, because it's not been a way that I've articulated very often.
Well, you're welcome. And I think what's important here is that, we kind of peel back that onion a little bit on what it takes to father, to father our children, because it's a huge challenge. And now you have, such a unique story. I have I have two kids, and I often feel like my hands are full. You're talking about 30, so you're well qualified to talk about this stuff. And because I've known parents that have gone through the adoption, people that have gone through that adoption process. I know a little bit about, and I hate to say it this way, but I think you know what I mean when I say this, some of the baggage that the kids bring to the table. And let's face it, those traumas, those things that the children bring into that process are the things that come back and show up in the adult world when they're trying to figure out what the heck happened. And so I'm going to pivot here a little bit and go, because this is what I see a lot of times, right? These children, they go through the trauma, and if they don't know how to deal with it, or they haven't been in a loving place where they can begin to even understand what has occurred in their lives, these children grow up and they become adults that have to suddenly either figure out how to deal with this trauma, or they fall back into bad habits, whether it's drug abuse, alcohol, to try to mask that pain. And so, let's pivot this a little bit. How have you seen, because I'm sure you've heard the stories as well, when you start working with other men, other dads, other entrepreneurs, that baggage shows up, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you help entrepreneurs that and other men that maybe, they're coming in, they're trying to figure things out, but it's hard to figure things out when you have other stuff that maybe hasn't been dealt with. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. So that's a loaded question, but I think the way to approach that is often entrepreneurs, especially new entrepreneurs or an entrepreneur in a phase of growing or scaling, they oftentimes the progress is slowed because they wait to take action until it's just right.
Oh
They,
boy, yeah.
they want to make sure everything's perfect and everything's in order, versus imperfect action is what gets going. We can always clean things up. I mean, you don't want to do sloppy work, but you do want to do work as an entrepreneur. Myself, as a parent, as an entrepreneur, as a coach, so many times you see people that just they're not where they want to be, and they're not having the impact that they're capable of, and they're living below their potential because they're waiting too long for
Mm,
everything to be in order before they get to work. And I think that is a huge problem with entrepreneurs because they take it too far. They get stuck in the grind, and they want everything to be perfect in the business, and they want the entrepreneurs get stuck in a one-day life. And what I mean by that is they get stuck in the grind, and they go so hard in the business, and they do everything for the business, but the family trips, the time with the family, all those things are being put back into a one day when I get my team, when I generate this much income, but one day never comes because
yeah.
the next problem comes, and the next problem comes, and then we got something else to address. And so the way that I help entrepreneurs is present, not perfect. That is what I help these entrepreneurs do. Your children don't need you to be perfect because you're not perfect. And very much a Christian, and as individuals, we are not perfect people. Christ is perfect, but we are not. We
Do
fall
you get
short.
that? Do you get that whole present but not perfect mentality from basically helping raise all these children? Is that where that comes from a little bit? Because as we all know, raising children can be really sloppy, right? So, and there's no perfection to it. It's a struggle. Is that kind of where that comes from, you think? And you've
Yeah. So
incorporated that into your business?
that certainly is a thing. As I dive into it deeper, I think where it came from is in Vegas, there was a significantly greater need for foster parents than they actually had foster parents. So there was more children in care than they had available resources to provide the care. And so they would have a commercial that would be a foster child saying, you don't have to be a perfect parent, you just have to be a parent, we just need help. And so
Yeah.
that was kind of a commercial it came from, but I totally adopted it into the things that I do, is because our children, they don't, I mean, they care how much money's in the bank, not because of the number, but
Yeah.
because of the things that the bank account allows.
Right. Right.
The connections, the memories, the relationships. That money is a tool that allows the relationships to bond, but they don't. I've never heard any kid say, "Oh, I wish my dad would work more and not spend time with me." Like that just
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
100. You hear all the time, I wish my dad would work less so he could be with me
Be
more.
with
And
you. Yeah.
that's where that comes from, because ultimately when it's all said and done, our spouse, especially a non-entrepreneur spouse, and our children, they want our time. They want our presence. They don't want us to be perfect. They It'd be nice if we were, but we're not. That's not reality. And
Yeah.
so they
Right.
want our presence. Like, especially on the holidays, our kids don't want the best gifts. They don't want the everything. They just want you. And so think about your presence is what matters, not how much time and things. And that's where it becomes really simple as an entrepreneur. People feel like some people say that there's no such thing as balance in entrepreneur life, but you have to look at it as a dynamic balance and not static. Where static is, it's I don't think of it as a teeter totter, like 1 hour in my family and 1 hour in my business, and
Yeah.
it's level. But I think about what needs the attention at what time, so all of the needs are being met. And when we think about present, not perfect, we can meet the needs of our family and the business in such a way that everything thrives. And when we do it right, when we turn our attentions to our family first, when we put our family on the calendar first, and we plan our business around that, we can be actually far more productive in the business and have better relationships at home when our family is the first priority. But
Yeah.
the problem is the entrepreneurs, the business often becomes their first priority. The family becomes second place on accident because they're grinding and they started their business for their family. And then they become a slave to the business. The relationships are not being fulfilled at home because their spouse and the children are not getting the time and attention that they need. And one thing as an entrepreneur, when you have the mindset present, not perfect, don't think about I need 2 hours in the business and I need 2 hours with family. I have 20 minutes with my family. Let's make this the best 20 minutes I have. I have an hour to work in the business. Let's work an hour in the business and make that the best you can. Wear one hat as a time as an entrepreneur, as a dad, as the chef, as the whatever. If you wear one hat at a time, do more in less time, and everything else falls into place.
I love this. There may be somebody listening right now and they're like, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm in corporate America. Is it fair to say the same principles apply?
Absolutely. It's a bit, this might sound counterintuitive. You might think I'm crazy for saying this. It is actually easier to make sure you show up as an entrepreneur than as a corporate America, because as an entrepreneur, you have some pretty good flexibility, often have control of your schedule, or at least a good portion of your schedule. Whereas in a job, you often are assigned a time to show up and time to clock out, and there's not as much flexibility. But absolutely, whether you're in a corporate America, whether you're an entrepreneur, wherever you are, it comes down to how you organize your time, because you still have kid activities, you still have doctor's appointments, school activities, and things like that. In a job, you may or may not have the flexibility to take off time as you desire to attend those events, but at the very least, you can make sure that if you have a kid's football at 6 o'clock and you have the ability to be off before 6 o'clock so you can be there, don't schedule a work appointment that you have control of at 5:30 that would put you at risk of not being able to do your things. And so it's more challenging, but there's definitely a lot of flexibility that you can have. And if you put your family on your calendar first, whatever capacity you can control, okay, my family needs this amount of time. These are the activities we have going on. And then let me put that in the calendar first. And as I am able, let me build around that. For instance, date nights, family activities, daddy-daughter things, a quick trip to the gas station. Those are all things that can happen. And whether you have full control of your schedule or not, you have full control of the commitments that you make. So whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you have a job and your ability to control your schedule is minimized, nobody can take away your word. So you can be, I think the problem where a lot of parenting falls is a poor integrity. These men have poor integrity, not because they're lying or dishonest, but they don't honor their word enough to follow through with the things that they say they're going to do. So if they tell their kid, oh, I will take you to the gas station for a little snack after, and then it's 2 weeks and you've still never taken, like, that's not a schedule thing. That's an integrity thing. You haven't been true enough to the words. You haven't done the things you said you're going to do. And that's what matters. Regardless of how much control of your time you have 100% control of your personal integrity. Following through with the things you say you're going to do will carry so much weight for your children, especially if the number of minutes or of time is minimized. Nobody can ever take away you doing the things you say you're going to do. And
man, listen, I think that's hugely important. I don't think we can underestimate. And listen, none of us, at least I firmly believe this, I don't think any of us set out to intentionally cause harm or trauma or injury to our children. I think most of us have good intentions. However, When we make those little promises, like, well, we're going to go out for ice cream, and then you miss it because you're on a phone call, I don't think we can put, we may not put, and I'm going to say as dads, enough emphasis on what harm we're actually causing our children by not maintaining it, what appears to be, maybe to you, well, it was just going out for ice cream, to them meant the world, right? And I don't think we can underestimate the trauma sometimes that we put our children through by not maintaining those little things go a long way as a dad.
Oh, absolutely. Let me share one little story that as parents we just don't know sometimes. So my oldest son, he came to us at 11 months old. He entered foster care at 7 months old. He was actually abandoned at Walmart. His mom was shoplifting and she was stopped by the security guard, and she was with a friend. And when the security guard stopped her, she bolted and left my son in the cart with her friend. His mom expected the friend to kind of take the brunt of it, but she had her own issues with the law, so she kind of turned her back on the mom. So, oh, I don't know them, and so he came into care. So yes, it is terrible that my son was abandoned at Walmart, but I'm not saying that as an attack on her character. Like she abandoned him. She had anticipated that her friend was going to take it for her, and that's not what happened. So
Yeah.
it is a bad situation, but I'm not trying to discredit her character or whatnot. But anyways, he came into foster care as a result of that, and he had so many adults fail him at such a young age. And for the longest time when he came into our home, because he had bounced between different homes and things like that. So he had so many adults fail him that he, even to this day at 10 years old, he asks, am I doing good? Am I having a good day? Like he so has such a hard time and the fear of letting adults down that he's such a people pleaser. And so but when he first came into our home, we were his second foster care placement, and he had two older siblings that stayed with grandma that weren't in foster care, and so he was separated from his siblings and his parents and stuff like that. And so for him, it is very, very key to follow through with the things that I say I'm going to do. Like if I say that I'm going to take him for ice cream, there's been times we've been going to ice cream at 11 o'clock at night just because of the pure circumstances of the day, that things happening outside of my control. But I made a promise to him that we were going to do that date, and I had to follow through, because for him especially, he takes that as something he did wrong. If something doesn't go my way or I don't follow through,
right,
he feels like he's not good enough or he's not doing that. And of my 5 kids, he's the one that my word is extra valuable, because he takes it personal. Like if I don't do the things that I've said I'm going to do for him, he thinks it's like something that he did wrong, or a poor choice he made makes it so he's not good enough for my time and attention and those kind of things. And so you really, as a parent, may not know how much things matter. And if you just casually say, oh yeah, we could get ice cream, and they take care of that and they put a tally mark, they may not have a book and write it down, Dad said on this day at this time we'll have ice cream, but you better believe they know if that tally mark has been checked, if that ice cream has been taken care of. And so I think my biggest thing as talking to entrepreneurs and dads is pay attention to the things you say to your kids, and don't give them false hope. Do the things that you say you're going to do, and better yet, let them have a space to occupy your time that they're in control of deciding what happens. 10 minutes a night is one thing that I would challenge everyone to do. Spend at least 10 minutes a night with each child and just talk about their day. Let them be in control of the activities, whether it's reading a book. My kids will want to take advantage of that, and sometimes oh, can we get ice cream for my time? No, we're going to bed in 5 minutes, right? And so, like, but let them have some control, because my two of my kids are heavy drug exposed and they've got some delays and stuff, but
Sure.
they really value the connection. And my son that's about to turn 8, he I recently started playing the card game on the computer, Hearts, with him, and that's something that he really looks forward to. One day, he came in. I was up early. The rest of the house was still asleep. It was 6 a.m. and I was in my room, and I turned the computer on, and it was something I could do quiet for him. And I played Hearts with him, and now that is becoming quality time is his thing. For me, I was just doing it to get my wife a few extra hours of sleep because it was a Saturday morning, and
Yeah.
now it's something that he thrives. So you never know just what it means to your kids to have that time that is just you and them, and do the things you say you're going to do and let them have it, because time is what they care about. Time we can't get back. We can get more money, we can get more everything, we just can't get more time. And so wasted opportunities is something that a lot of entrepreneurs live in with regret, because they live a 1 day lifestyle. One day, when this happens, then we'll go on the trips, then we'll go on the vacation. Do not live a 1 day lifestyle. Live a life now that one day is your control. You're writing the story of one day.
Cory, that's so important what you just said. I've had to learn this as an entrepreneur. I didn't necessarily, go searching, so to speak, to be an entrepreneur. Some of it just kind of happened by accident. And then I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur, and I've had to learn how to manage my calendar. And there are flat out times where I block things off. In fact, we just ran into a situation in my house where I needed to be present with my daughter for 3 days. We had to drive off to a college, and basically I sat down looked at my calendar, what's going on, and I started emailing people and saying, I absolutely need to reschedule this. I've got something that's come up. I need to reschedule. And what I found is, when you're honest and open with people, they're more than happy to reschedule. Now, did it stress me out a little bit? Yes. But I also got some time in that, at this stage, when your daughter's getting ready to go off to college, I'm never getting that time back. I'm never getting that time back. And so it was very important to make sure that stuff was blocked on my calendar. And I think that so many entrepreneurs, I've seen them miss this. And quite honestly, I'd say that the biggest failure of entrepreneurs, other than, what you were talking about, is this inability to take action, is that they don't know how to manage that time between their family and what they're trying to achieve. And so I think you summarized it very nicely today, quite honestly.
Well, and if anyone needs greater assistance in that, I have a 5-day challenge that I run every month. It's called the Present Dad Challenge. And so over a period of a week, I share a framework of what entrepreneurs can do to show up at home so they're present, because that's exactly it.
Yep.
Present, not perfect. We're not looking to be perfect dads. We don't need to be perfect dads. That's not the bar that we need to have. We need to be present. We need to have the relationships, because when the end of the day comes, the things that matter most is the relationships that we build, the connection. And eventually our time here on earth will pass, and the only thing we take with us is the knowledge that we acquire and the relationships that we develop. And so the money, the things of the world don't matter. And so if you want more assistance, if you want a system to learn how to be a more present, intentional father, find me on Facebook, or come join my challenge at dadsunleashed.com/present.
Yeah, and we'll put that information in the show notes, of course. And I encourage you to reach out to Cory, not only if you're an entrepreneur thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, but if I'm sure he's open to this. So I'm just throwing it out there. I'm throwing you under the bus, Cory. If you have questions about the foster care, if this is something that you and your family are considering or thinking about, I think Cory's more than qualified to answer one or two questions on this. So, and I'm sure if you got anything out of this podcast, like I did, you're talking about a man here who's incredibly caring and willing to put himself out there and help and make an impact in this world. And that's leaving a legacy. And I think that's cool, Cory. So I'm just so grateful that we got this time together. And thank you for being on the True Man podcast and for all you do for those children who knows what would have happened to them without you being in their lives. And thank you for helping entrepreneurs out there that need that support.
Yeah, I love it. I love connection. So like Mike said, yes, if you want guidance with foster care, reach out. If you want help with parenting and navigating a calendar as an entrepreneur, reach out. If you just want a friend, reach out. If you feel alone and you need someone that understands, just reach out. I love connection. I love friendships, and I love making sure that families are strong because the world is in need of families. And so if I could be a resource in any capacity, whether it's a friend, whether it's instructions, whether it's helping you become a better dad, whether anything that will help you bond with your children or your spouse, let me know. I'll be happy to assist.
Awesome. What a great place to end on. Thank you, Cory, for being on the podcast. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. It was wonderful.